Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on a journey of 2 lifetimes, part 6 of hopefully 6. I'm pretty sure that we can finish up this particular book this Mushoku Monday, but we'll see. I know that like half of this entire Mushoku Monday is going to literally be one chapter. Like we went into like one-page chapters, then out of nowhere we have like the rest of the book is legit just one story. So going to be really interesting to kind of dive into that stuff. A lot of really interesting stories coming up here, but hopefully we can get some juicy discussion in with this last little bit here, because honestly right now, while I love a lot of this novel, this particular volume, it's, yeah, obviously not to par with a lot of the other chapters of the mainline series, which makes sense because it's just a compilation of shorts. They're kind of just sporadic shorts in different locations, different medias and whatnot. But anyways, that said, hey chat. How's it going? Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for dropping by for the premiere. Thank you guys so much for your support, your kind words, all that stuff that fuels me and keeps me going. You mean a great, great, great deal to me. And yes, I appreciate the VOD watchers too. Y'all that are busy during the day, when I drop it in the middle of Monday, you're like, dude, I'm working. You got some guy to drop in there for like 30 minutes ago. I gotta get back to work later, guys. Thank you guys for dropping by. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and supporting the videos, watching it, clicking the like. Hit that like button. It's the easiest, and it's free. It's just free. Hit it right now. Just do it right now. But yes, as per usual, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate by support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Spud Monkey with 10 months at this point. Thank you so much, Spud Monkey, for your support. Inferno Torch with a gifted membership. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving somebody else those emotes. And yes, Rose Moist with a super. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your longtime support. It means a great deal to me. But anyways, with that said, let's just get right into it, because hopefully we can get this whole thing. It's a lot of pages, so we're going to go through a lot of stuff. Let's jump into it. Short story, Norn's part-time job. I know I kind of teased that last week. I'm like, yeah, the next one's part-time job, and it's Norn, and everybody's like, wait, gotta go, what is that? Gotta get in that one. Rudius Greyrat had acquired some information of great importance. It was information that should have been confidential, and he shouldn't have gotten it. It started with what Ginger saw when she was doing her shopping. When Rudius heard it, he was shaken. Even as he was wondering how that could be, he also wanted to see it for himself. He knew it was forbidden, but he couldn't suppress his curiosity. That was how he ended up in a diner hidden away in the corner of Shiraya. It did fairly good business, perhaps closer to a cafe. It might have been geared towards nobles, as a clientele skewed more towards highborn types. With Rudius's noble-style outfit and sunglasses to hide his face, he must have stood out. He thought that he should have brought somebody like Selfie, and it could have been a date. The next thing about this place that he figured he should mention is that all the servers were women wearing somewhat unique outfits. Not tight leather or fishnet tights and bouncy bunny ears. Damn it. Damn it. The dresses had probably once been used by ladies in waiting in the palace somewhere. In other words, the servers' uniforms were classic maid outfits. We have a maid cafe. For some reason, we have a maid cafe. I wonder why we have a maid cafe. Nanahoshi. Nanahoshi. The main item on the menu was apparently tea they imported from Asura Kingdom. The goods he had his eyes on took the form of a young woman weaving precariously between tables. Her blonde hair, just like her mom's, was tied back. She had the same uniform as other staff. It was his little sister, Norn. Old Nornal. Old Nornal's working at a maid cafe. Super cute. I want a picture. I think I've seen a picture of her in a maid outfit. I mean, obviously, since they have the whole Aisha and Lilia thing, everybody's in that outfit. I've seen plenty of Roxy ones. They're great. What was Norn doing working here? Was she short on pocket money? Did she want to learn the ways of the world while she was still a student? Or perhaps, unbeknownst to him, she'd pick up a debt and had to work it off. He had to infiltrate this coffee shop and find some answers. Welcome. Please take a seat. Huh? I haven't seen you before. New hire? A friend of mine is unwell, so I'm just filling in for a few days. I hope you'll excuse my shortcomings in my service. According to that intel, a friend of Norn's from the university was sick, and she had ended up here to help out on short notice. Only Norn, student council president, and relied on by all, would have done this for a reason like that. What a relief it wasn't a debt. This wasn't bad to Rudius. He decided to excuse himself. Part of him wanted to watch Norn working, but she'd be mad if she caught him. He knows she was going to catch him. With this sort of thing, it was best to just take a quick look accidentally on purpose, then leave. He stood up, but then... What? There was a crash of something that bumped into him, and he felt a warm sensation around his middle. Looking down, it was bright red. What the? He shouted without thinking, but it wasn't like blood was spurting out of him. It's like a random girl in a maid outfit just is like slipping by with a knife. It's like just a random like Disciple the man god comes out of nowhere as a maid outfit girl and just stabs him while he's at a cafe looking at his sister. The story ends there. Killed by a maid outfit girl. He stood up right in the path of one of the servers, and she lost her tray. Oh, I'm sorry. Still, he shouldn't have yelled. The server seemed to misinterpret him as being angry, because she got on her knees and started to apologize. Your clothes, sir, they must be very expensive. Huh? Oh, yeah, I guess. The pretext for this outfit had been something that wouldn't embarrass him amongst nobility. It probably had costed a fair bit. But when he spoke, the server's face turned white. Well, yeah, you just literally told her that her life is over. I beg your pardon, sir. I should pay for your clothes, but my family's so poor, I couldn't afford the finery of a noble such as yourself. Oh, no, don't worry about it. I could pay with my body, so please forgive this. I have 2 younger sisters. I have to feed them, so please, sir. God damn. She was not a good listener. But then it happened. A figure loomed behind the waitress as she groveled on the ground. She put her hand on the waitress's shoulder and ushered her behind herself. Kurna, I'll look after this customer. You go out back and get changed. Norn? But please, leave this to me. I know him. Norn's so mad. She's gonna be so mad. The waitress, called Kurna, returned to the back of the shop, and Marius was left face to face with Norn. All right, big brother, what are you doing here? Norn had her hands on her hips and was looking at him coldly. The same as when he was at the university and caused it a problem. That same look. Apparently, his disguise wasn't helping. He ran through a bunch of excuses in his mind, but it didn't look like he was getting out of this. I'm so sorry. I have 2 younger sisters. Both are growing girls, and I have to keep them fed. I am aware. I heard one of them. I thought he was going to make the same exact excuse the other girl did. If you want, I'll offer my body instead. I'll offer you my body instead. Please, I have a family. I don't have much money. Please, Norn, take my body instead. Oh gosh, Andrew, shut up. I heard one of them has started a part-time job without telling her family. It made me worry. Norn sighed. A friend came to me asking me to fill in for her, so I said it would. Satisfied? Yep. That's all your big brother needed to hear. Sorry to bother you at work. I'll be off then. You don't need to go. Why not stay and enjoy yourself? That's a surprise there. I think him saying that she didn't tell anybody and he was worried. She's like, okay, he's not doing this to be mean. He took her up on it and then spent the whole day at the cafe watching Norn go about her job. Okay, it's like there's a limit there, Rudy. At some point, she's like, okay, you can leave now. She was a hard worker, and while he saw her mess up a fair bit, she didn't get panicked or flustered or sulky like she used to. Instead, she calmly got on with her job. Watching her, he could see how much she had grown. He went home with a warm and fuzzy feeling. A cute story. A little bit anticlimactic, but I think he could have played into a little bit more, but it's fine. It's just showing how much she grows. I assumed it was going to get into this idea that she was klutzy, just constantly messing up. Moving on, short story, the morning of my day off. It was a day after Ruiz got back from wrapping up a big work trip, and he had his heart set on spending a quiet day at home. It only counted as a day off if you could properly rest your body and mind. Agreed. I agree. That's why I tell a lot of people I haven't really had like an actual day off in like forever, where you just don't do anything at all. It's usually like if I take a vacation or something in my previous job, it's just like I'm working on something, pulling trees, building a fence, doing something, making a shed. So we got up a little later than usual, then enjoyed a late breakfast. Resting was about relaxing without worrying about time after all. He considered his options for the day. Playing with Lucy was one, but she had just gone out to play with her red-headed mama. Redhead mama. Red mama. He can go after them, but he would just wait for them to get back. That in mind, he had the morning free. Huh? Or so he thought, after he heard a kerfuffle break out from upstairs. From the living room, he threw a glance at the stairs as Roxy came running down, halfway through putting on her coat. Her hair was mussed up, as though she just got out of bed, one braid unraveling. I'm late. Oh God, how shameful for her to oversleep. He quickly held out a half-eaten bread. Roxy took it in her teeth, as if she was in a bread-eating contest. Thank you, Rudy. I'm off. With that, she ran out the door. She worried him a bit, actually running off with bread in her mouth. If she got into a collision with a transfer student, that could start off a wife starts an affair with a high school boy love story. If he chased after her now, he could nab the transfer student role. Not to brag, but he was pretty sure that he could make her heart flutter. First, he'd go, oh, you're that girl. Then he'd nickname her the bread girl. And when she hurt herself on sports day, he carried her to the nurse's office. Where are we going here? They go out to buy supplies together at the school festival, then confess as they gazed off to the campfire on the roof. Who puts a campfire on a roof? What are we talking about? Roxy would love all those scenes for sure. Except there was no sports day at the University of Magic. Okay. And then like one of those random moments where Rui's mind just runs. Huh? Where's Roxy? I thought I heard her. She left for school. I thought she said there was no school today. Oh, Yeah, I assume that she got the wrong day. It's like the weekend or something like that. She could have lesson preps or something to do when there was no classes. He considered the idea for a second, but this was Roxy, as if she would oversleep and be late when she had things to do. Roxy was clumsy in various ways, but she had her life together. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we've covered this before, where she's gotten up late before. When she gets home, tell her food's ready, okay? Will do. Maybe Aisha was thinking along the same lines. She disappeared into the kitchen, flapping her hands. Ruiz finished his breakfast, then, with a cup of tea, went to wait by the door. Not long after. Yeah, I'm assuming what he means by the whole, like, thought the same thing. Aisha's like, yeah, when she gets back, tell her the food's in there. Because she's going to be back in, like, 5 minutes. And Ruiz is thinking the same thing. Yeah, I'm going to go stand by the door and wait for her to come in. Not long after, the door opened with a click, and Roxy came in. She made it past the entranceway, then jumped when she saw Rudius. Do you need something? She glared at him. If he teased her now, she'd get huffy. Welcome home, my lady. Your meal is waiting for you. Or would my lady prefer to take a bath first? He teased her anyway. It was a shame not to waste the chance. I wouldn't waste it. Besides, she was cute when she got it in a huff. He took her coat, holding out one hand at the same time like an escort. Fine, breakfast then. She gave a pout, and then took his hand without complaining. Roxy liked this sort of thing. He sat back and sipped his tea while Roxy munched on her food. As he stared, Roxy's cheeks turned pink, and she looked away. We're not even going to bring it up. We're not even going to talk about it. But she didn't tell him not to stare or ask what he wanted. Breakfast went by comfortably enough. It was a laid-back affair. Do I find you at leisure today, mistress? Yes, there's no class today. Do you have the day off too, Rudy? I do. In that case, would the lovely young lady care to accompany me on a date? Roxy froze, looked to the living room, then to Rudius, then glanced away a little, before twirling her hair around her finger. A date with me? What she meant was, you'd settle for me. Roxy tended to avoid being alone with him whenever Selfie was around them. He was sure that Selfie didn't mind, but it wasn't for him to say for sure. I'm assuming this is like right after she got there. Well, no, because Edison's there. So this would have to at least be after volume 15. Why would she still be in this mood? Because I remember them having plenty of times, but I mean, it's just an aspect of like, this is something that he's observed, and maybe it just wasn't really kind of gotten into with the original mainline series, is that she literally feels uncomfortable, like she's taking him away from Selfie. Like this is a place that she still, at this point, still doesn't feel like 100% comfortable. That sucks. That really sucks. Why yes, we shall take my steed and ride together to the stream that runs outside of town, then whisper words of love to each other on its bank. Okay. She then noticed her untidy braid. Give me a moment to get ready. If she meant to doll herself up for him, he'd wait all day. But of course. And so he got a date with Roxy. The two of them rode together on horseback. He was behind, and Roxy was in the front, and he held onto the reins. The top of her hat was right in front of him. Looking around, there was other people on the road, but no one paid attention. But from time to time, someone would glance at them with a confused expression. They were Ruquag mercenaries. When he waved, they bowed. There was something about riding on a horse together. It brought back old memories. I immediately knew what that was going. I immediately knew where they're going with that. Master. Rudy, I told you not to... Never mind. What is it, apprentice? She's playing into it. Again, this is like past Edis. Crazy. If you're going to ask to touch my chest from behind, then the answer is no. She made a bit of a face when he called her master, but went along with it. He didn't touch her breast, of course. There'd be plenty of chances later. Remember the day, years ago, when you taught me Saint Tier magic at the graduation exam? Yes, you had a hard time, because you were too scared of the horse to get on it. I wasn't scared of the horse. Roxy looked back to him. I was scared to go outside. If she hadn't dragged him out, he probably would have stayed a shut-in for the rest of his life. It's so crazy, because I thought that they sort of already implied this before. I thought that he implied this to Roxy at some point. I know he's thought about it hundreds of times, because again, this is a massive thing for him. This was a massive, massive shift in his entire two lives, was this moment right here. This is why I love it so much. Like, I think this is like literally the pinnacle. I keep wanting to say those two words. I want to say TP so bad. A massive shift in his life that changed everything. But for some reason, I thought that he implied at least at some point an aspect of this, that she brought him out of a dark. I want to say it was after PAX. I'm pretty sure it was after PAX. But I might be thinking just the aspect of that she taught him so much stuff. Because she was a failure to PAX that she thought, and he was telling her how much she saved him. Maybe he didn't get specifics. It's still cool to bring up again. But I mean, this could exist before that as well, perfectly fine. Because there it would just be him repeating it. Is that true? It is. And I'm truly grateful to you. Thank you. I didn't do anything. Roxy turned to face forward, then started playing around with her hair again. Then she gently squeezed his arm and leaned back into his chest. You rescued me from the labyrinth, Rudy. We're even. He couldn't see the look on her face, but felt sure that she was giving him a slightly embarrassed smile. So cute. So cute. I love my Roxy chapters. And again, I've said it before. I'll say it again for those new here. I think in general, Roxy in the first volume was such an impactful moment for him. And it's such a great concept there. And that's why I always get so, I deep dive and get so into the idea of the Roxy religion. I think the whole aspect of Pantsu is just like this perversion moment from a long time ago, transformed into a religion because she did for him what an entire lifetime he had before he couldn't pull off. Simply just pulling his hand, pulling him up onto that horse, and going out there. A simple idea, a simple concept. It seems so stupidly simple, but for him was huge. And here he's telling her that, which I think that's probably why they brought up the whole idea of him mentioning that she seems to be cautious about going places alone with him without Selfie there, being somewhere without Selfie nearby or seeing where they're at. Again, that discomfort that she has being a part of this family, even after Edison is a part of the family, that's crazy that she still has that discomfort. She is his wife. Why would she still feel like she needs to give Selfie some sort of preferential treatment? Why does she still feel that she owes Selfie something? I understand it in the idea that, yes, she's allowing Roxy to be in there when she never had to. Again, Selfie is Ruius's wife. She was his wife from the very beginning. To be able to walk in that house, Selfie has to give her permission. And I think there's still an aspect of respect there. But at the same time, it's also disrespecting herself. And I think what this whole thing here is him telling her, you were extremely critical to my life. I would have never met Selfie if it weren't for you. I would have never met Edison if it weren't for you. I would have never had Lucy if it weren't for you. You are that special. Cool chapter. Short story, dance practice. We had a Roxy chapter. Now it's time to have an Edison Selfie chapter. I think that's what this one is. That day, Ruius wrapped up his work trip and came back to the magic city of Shariah like always. He thought his trip would drag on for a while, only for it to be over before he knew it. Wrapping things up quickly made him feel pretty good. When he arrived at home, Lilia called out just like always. Welcome home. That was faster than I expected. Yes, I'm quite something, if I do say so myself. He was joking, but Lilia nodded like that made perfect sense. Yep, Lilia's like, yep, that's perfect, master. She'd agree with him. That wasn't good. If he kept this up, he'd end up deluding himself into thinking he was actually special. He just happened to get lucky this time. Or perhaps he misjudged the time it would take. If he were really all that, he'd have seen it was possible from the start. But then, there was no point thinking like that. The important thing is that whenever he got cocky, he ended up blowing the next trip. It was important to praise himself, to keep his spirits up. But he had to do it in moderation. Yeah, he's always worried about his ego. Always worried about that. Again, the first time he got overconfident, he ended up with a donut hole. Huh? Come to think of it, where is everyone? There was no sign of Selfie, Edison, or the others. At this time, Roxy was probably at school. Well, Lilia was uncharacteristically hesitant. You don't mean... Goddamn, dude, chill. If something happened to them, I'm sure Lilia would immediately tell you. At once, he was struck with a horrible premonition. His whole body tensed, but Lilia, seeing this, quickly dispelled his fears. Now, granted, again, this is at the time right here where he's going out and doing jobs for Orsted, and the man god is actively coming after his family. So he's going to have those worries, obviously. But I would assume that Lilia would immediately say something. Oh, no. It's not like anything bad happened. Please don't worry. Right. What had happened? Maybe Edison had finally forgotten her own strength and ended up breaking Linnea or Persenna's back or something. Edda's doing some freaky stuff in the bed with Linnea and Persenna. No, he was pretty sure that would have been categorized as a bad thing, even if they could end up fine with healing magic. I mean, it's happened before, technically. So what's going on? I was instructed to keep it a secret from you, Master Rudius. That just made him want to know more. But he'd been living in this world for 30 years now. He was married. He hadn't gotten to this age without knowing a thing or two about how things work for the female mind. He wouldn't pry. Lilia was kind enough to say this much, and that meant it probably wasn't anything bad. With that, he headed for his study. For now, he'd fill his diary. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, good. But then he heard a voice from outside the window. It was Selfie. He peeked out and saw two women stepping together in time, hand in hand. White hair and red hair bobbed up and down in the time of the call. It was dancing. Selfie and Edison were dancing. Poor Rudius is getting sent off again. Husband and wife outside are dancing, and Rudius is over here. What were they doing a thing like that for? He was a tiny bit curious. I mean, it's one of those moments where it's like, why wouldn't you immediately know what they're doing? Did they ever make a beautiful pair, though? Selfie wore trousers that harkened back to the days of Fitz, a rare sight. Edison was wearing a skirt for the first time in ages. It was the opposite of usual for the both of them, but they both looked dashing and cool. Reese was so entranced by the sight of the two of them going through the steps that he wanted to watch them forever. Uh-oh, no you don't, Rudius told himself. This is a secret, remember? None of that. He wouldn't sneak a look at the fairy dancers. But still, Sylphie's dancing the man's part. She's still just as dashing as she was when she was in her Fitz days. Yes, she was beautiful, he told himself. The way she stands so straight and tall. And then there was her partner. She was much better at dancing than she was back in the day. Edison learned how to match her partner's rhythm at the Sword Sanctum. This much was easy for her. But no, perhaps Selfie is just a much better teacher. Fitz was always a good teacher, wasn't he? Good old Master Fitz. Good old Master Fitz. Oh, hey, big brother, welcome home. Aisha got him. Rudius realized with a start that Aisha had been near the window. She came over to him, waving. Crap, this was supposed to be a secret. He'd been caught. Rudius. Drawn by Aisha's voice, Edison noticed him too. She immediately realized Sylphie's hands. It was like he walked in on her having an affair. But then, it was Selfie, so he couldn't blame her. He couldn't hold a candle to Selfie. No, you can't hold a candle to Fitz. Oh, Rudy, welcome home. Selfie noticed him next and came running. She opened the window to welcome him back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spy on you. What were you doing? He couldn't help the fact that he had been spying. So, he doubled down and asked. Dance practice. Lately, you've been visiting palaces and attending parties and things in lots of different countries, haven't you? Edison goes with you as a bodyguard. But she was saying, if she had to dance, she might embarrass you. I'm not going to get embarrassed just because Edison can't dance. Edison is trying so hard. Shut up, Rudius. Shut up, Rudius. If anyone dared to insult his wife for being so obsessed with her sword that she couldn't dance, he'd be questioning their sanity before feeling embarrassed. You know, the woman beside me is a world-renowned berserker sword king, right? You know your head could be off your precious neck before you know what hit you, right? Are you feeling okay? Jokes aside, everyone had their strengths and weaknesses, and Edison was better than anyone else with a blade. So he felt like not being able to dance was fine. When I got the chance, I was going to dance like I used to and surprise you. Edison pouted. She said it as though she was good at dancing to begin with. He felt she danced like a pro wrestler before. Maybe she was talking big in front of Selfie. T, you heard her. Right then. If I'm going to keep up with you when we get the chance, I better practice too. Oh, then I'll be your partner, big brother. Aisha raised up her hand enthusiastically. And that was how, for the first time in a long time, he found himself practicing dancing. With Aisha. He's got his two wives there, and he's just like, okay, Aisha. After practice was over, Selfie snuck into the bedroom. Then, sounding shyly, asked, will you dance with me too? So they danced, just the two of them. That's cute. Edison is trying so hard. And they've implied that, like, every single time he goes to these places, he's having to bring Edison with him in order to protect him. Which, again, this is like 30 years in. And there was even a lot of times where she had to dress up in a dress and everything like that, all frilly, and it's just like completely out of her comfort zone. So it makes sense. Short story, Fitz's doubts. Hey, Rudy, have you ever been to a brothel? It was a quiet afternoon. Rudius was relaxing in the living room. And at that moment, there was only two people there with Rudius, Selfie and Roxy. When Rudius heard the question, he was sure that she must have gotten the wrong idea or something. If your wife suddenly asked if you've been to a hostess, or rather, a brothel, she was saying, you're seeing another woman in secret, aren't you? In other words, She suspected he was cheating. No such thing was true, of course, but Miss Sylphiette had been clever with the questioning. She asked if he'd ever been to a brothel, and in truth, he had. It wasn't like he'd gone every chance that he got, but after he found himself with Edie, Soldat had taken him to a high-class brothel. In the end, after being unable to reach the finish line, he got drunk off his face, and then Sarah slapped him. It's like I always have to include that part. It was a painful experience. He hadn't been back since, but it was true that he had gone at the time, which was to say, what he ought to do was just play it cool and be honest. Oh, yeah, ages ago, but not recently, you know. He messed up. The way that it came out made it sound like he'd gone yesterday. How does that... I think that's a mistranslation. But I mean, that's his whole, like, overthinking things. Ages ago, but not recently. Ages ago is obviously yesterday. But again, it's overthinking things. What sort of place? Until yesterday, he'd been in the Osra Kingdom. After finding Edison's parents' bones in the conflict zone, they reinterred them in Osra, then invited Ghislaine to visit the grave. James, the current head of the Boreas family, had invited him out for dinner, during which time he'd come out and asked, "What do you think of my granddaughter, eh?" Ruse hadn't made any moves, of course. Edis sat beside him. At a single glare from her, the poor girl drew back, trembling. And more importantly, Rudius was currently the celibate, which was to say, yesterday, he had not been to a brothel. That was a long explanation to say that he wasn't gone yesterday, so I guess that wasn't a mistranslation, that he was overly thinking. We just had for a minute there, I'm like thinking, why the hell is he talking about visiting James and him offering a granddaughter? I know why he's offering a granddaughter, and that's obviously in order to loop in his family with Rudius. That's power right there. Rudius right now is massive power. Very tied in with Ariel, of course. But, yeah, we're bringing this up. We're talking about brothels. I mean, still to the point, we just went to the conflict zone. That's where I was at. Do you have to include that part, too? The brothel from ages ago, you mean? Yes. He didn't know what was being asked right now. They might be testing him. If the brothel he described now actually had the same system, and the same girls working there as the brothel in their neighborhood, they could have him trapped. That is true. I don't blame him for overthinking this. This is logical thinking right here. He could describe the idea there's, a bunch of kids that, have no homes, and they take care of them at this brothel. The youngs, unfortunately, being raised up and trained to eventually, yes, have a position as one of the women that will be serving the men. And it could end up realizing it's the same sort of system here, which I would assume that's a thing. Again, they don't have anything else but to sell their bodies. It's either that or if they're in debt. But they had nothing to worry about. He'd breeze through this test. Why, are you asking? Still, it was scary, so he took his time getting to the point. There was nothing on his conscience, but if he answered incorrectly, he'd probably end up apologizing on his knees. Foreshadowing. Actually, the parents of one of my students are in debt, so she had to leave the school and go to a brothel. She was worried, so she came to me for advice. But I don't know much about it. I've been struggling to work out what to say to her. That sucks. That sucks. And again, I just mentioned that, and I literally just talked about that, and it's probably because when I was breaking this down, I probably seen it. I mean, again, it's logical thinking there. If you have debt, or if you have no place to work, you have no trade skill, you can't find work, you have no place to stay, and you're female, brothel. If you look decent, brothel. That's literally where you're going to be working. It's either that or you end up in the forced servitude. It's either that or you're in the same situation as Julie. That's why Julie ended up there. I mean, thank goodness that Julie ended up there, not to brothel. Granted, she'd probably be in training for the most time until that point came, but still. That was it. He'd gotten worked up for nothing. Still, a girl having to leave school and go into sex work for her family's debt was heavy. Well, the place I went was really high class, but you got all sorts of brothels, so I don't think it'll be much help. Please, tell me. This will be the last time I see her, so I want to offer her something. That sucks, dude. That sucks. I would be like, well, there's a great place over in the West. It seemed like a good establishment. I mean, they were taking care of the kids. But no, technically, I think the woman there mentioned the idea that the men were horrible to them. That there was a lot of people that came in that was horrible to them. So, I mean, for the moment, he told her everything he knew. He started from the system the high-class brothel used, and went through the courtesan education and techniques. Now, even in his previous life, he'd never gone to that sort of establishment. All he knew was stuff that he picked up from Aero games. Anything other than that was second-hand knowledge from people like Soldat or Elise. That being said, he thought this was close enough to being true. In the end, it all came down to pleasing the dude, so that he'd think that he wanted to see them again. Pleasing might have sounded simple, but you'd be wrong if you thought that it was just about being good at the act itself. If anything, the real test was your hospitality the rest of the time. Things like introducing yourself with grace, showing deference to the customer, and physical contact in the form of a casual squeeze of the hand or shoulder brush. People tend to see prostitution as shady line of work, but as you got closer to the top, the job looked more like you'd find at a morally upstanding establishment. The key things were solicitude and customer service. Yeah, I agree with all this stuff. I mean, I really love how Apothecary Diaries kind of portrays it. The idea of having all those establishments, and then you have the queens, the ones that were like, yeah, you have to pay some dough to get these people. And a lot of cases, it's just people going in there and just being able to be at their side. Like literally just visiting them for like a cheaper price or whatever, just to be in the room with them. And you can't touch kind of thing. Like there's just these levels. And yes, a lot of that has to do with just the enjoyment of being at their side. They're sought after, they entertain, all that stuff. That was immediately obvious when you looked at Elise, otherwise known as a sex grandmaster. And who Rudius got the impression had taught Roxy and Selfie all their techniques. Yeah, you knew. She wasn't just good with her hands. She enticed men with everything else as well, employing her wiles to get them in bed and providing a no-strings-attached bang. And she offered full aftercare too. She's a full-service pro. Cliff would probably flip his lid if he called her a prostitute, but Rudius wouldn't have been surprised if she worked her way to the top of a high-class brothel somewhere, considering her background. Wouldn't doubt it. I think at some point she mentioned the idea of, shoot, who was that? There was a chapter where she was talking to somebody and she went down some crazy rabbit hole about like, be careful with this, this, and this, because you could end up in this and somebody would take it. I think it was when they came back from the Beggaret continent and Ellis was trying to get him to bag Roxy. And she mentioned something about the idea that she'll end up here and then she'll get swept up by somebody and used and then she'll end up in the service and whatnot. I think it was that point. It was one of those situations where she gets into like this rabbit hole and you're like, she probably has experience with this. She probably dealt with this at some point. I think she legit talked at some point about being forced into servitude like that. As Rudius explained at length, Roxy took notes, looking serious. I see, yes. So you're saying, if I want to know more, I should ask Elise. Yeah, she seemed like she knows more than me. Thank you. I'll ask the next time I see her. Roxy really was an eager student. With that diligence, even if she somehow ended up as a prostitute, she'd rise up high. Rudius, your brain. Rudius, your brain. He just like goes this whole long scenario about how this could end up like this. Like, chill, dude, chill. With that diligence, even if she somehow ended up as a prostitute, she'd rise high. She probably wouldn't reach the very top, not with her figure. But Rudius, for one, would be charmed into becoming a repeat customer. Then after he spent all of his money on her, he'd tell her that they'd run away together. But she would look back at him, cold, unimpressed, and reply deadpan, I'm afraid I must decline. He'd then turn into a stalker, and a man in black would arrest him, drag him off to management. Hey, Rudy. Selfie wouldn't make it to the top either, but she definitely built up a fan base. You'd peel off layer after layer of baggy clothing off his silent fits until you found slender Sylphiette. She'd be so shy that when you stroked her face, her ears would twitch in embarrassment. He'd definitely be a repeat customer. Then after he'd fallen head over heels for her, he'd beg her to marry him, and a man in black would... You seem to know a lot about this. Have you really not been recently? She was so intimidating that before he knew it, he was on his knees. But just to be clear, there wasn't really anything on his conscience. I really haven't, okay? It would take some time for her to actually believe him. Oof. Rudius walked right into that one. Okay, so I was kind of critical of him kind of going down a weird rabbit hole earlier, and he was technically right because Selfie ended up calling him on it. Dorky chapter. Moving on, short story, Chef Rudius's Special Skewers, yawn chapter. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, yawn chapter. I find the food stuff boring. The staple, we'll see. I don't know, I might get some fun out of this when I actually read it. That sometimes happens. The staple food for the superb were the invisible wolf meat. It was actually really tender and savory like pork. Maybe they evolved the ability to turn invisible after being relentlessly hunted for their meat. But all that was just Rudius' imagination running away. In any case, there was tasty, fresh meat in his hands. He had a little bottle of Ogre's drink of choice soy sauce. With this, victory was as good as his. While he was preparing, Sander came over. He peered at Rudius' hands with a look of great interest. Oh? Do you cook, Master Rudius? Yes, I'm no professional, but I like to at least make the things I want to eat. As he talked, he added alcohol and grated fruit to the soy sauce, then mixed it up. He chopped the meat into bite-sized pieces, then set it to marinate in sauce. Do you cook, Sander? Oh, no. I just do the eating. I do have a relative who's a cook, though. He even opened a shop in the King Dragon Kingdom. Know who that is? In a big city? That's great. Well, I heard he fell into a slump and shut down a dozen or so years ago. Who knows what happened after that? We know. We know why he shut down. The bigger the city, the greater the variety of businesses. In this world where there was no chain stores, you had all sorts when it came to eating out. Reese had eaten in the King Dragon Kingdom long ago, but from what he remembered, it hadn't been that good. But this relative of yours is an amazing cook, huh? Just goes to show that in a big city, it's hard to keep afloat with skills alone, right? When there were lots of shops competing for business, you had to put your energy into promotion, and things like location impacted sales too. It was a dog-eat-dog world out there. With the meat still marinating, Rui stabbed holes into the pieces before arranging them on one of the skewers. Then he lined them up over the grill that he made with earth magic. He would have liked some charcoal, but it was no good getting greedy. Sizzling and crackling sounds filled the air, along with the rich smell of burnt soy sauce. Now, that smells good. It does, right? Ruiz flipped the skewers and brushed on some more sauce. When it started crackling, he turned and added another layer. He went through this process until the sauce ran out. He then sprinkled some spices. The superb grew in the village and took a bite. Meat burned his tongue as he turned it over in his mouth. The rich aroma of the soy sauce has rose up to the back of his nose. Ah, there it is. This is the stuff, he thought. He wasn't totally happy with the marinade that he had thrown together. He hadn't fully brought out the special soy sauce thing. Even so, his brain was shrieking with happiness. For the first time in more than 20 years, he was experiencing the joy of soy sauce. I say, Master Rudius, this is damn tasty. Sander, without asking, was eating a skewer. Rudius would forgive him, though, because he finally got to eat food with soy sauce again. Well, it's a long way from my dream flavor. Rudius could make himself a bowl of tamagogake or gohan, but cooking with soy sauce wasn't amateur territory. If he wanted to serve this to the likes of Nanahoshi, he needed to experiment a bit more. When the battle was over, he'd assault the ogre's home, have them teach him how to cultivate the beans and brew them into soy sauce, then get Aisha to help them grow them at their house. He had to chase his dream. You're a diligent one, Master Rudius. I just want to eat the food that I like. Pursuing a dream isn't something many can do, you know? Sanders sounded like a middle-aged man, waxing philosophical like that. Maybe he had something in his past. Sander, you're not old enough to talk like that yet. Haha, just so. Begging your pardon. Well, Master Rudius, when you make something that's more like your dreams, I hope you'll let me partake again. All right, it's a deal. Rudius continued his experimentation, and in the end, he ended up serving some great fried rice balls to Nanahoshi. But that was a story for another time. And apparently not in this volume, I don't think. I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, it's alright. Again, not a big fan of the food stuff. Short story, The Throne. Norn Greyrat had no grand ambitions. She was an ordinary woman and a commoner. Yes, she had an older brother and a sister who were a little too exceptional. But Norn was just another average girl who would have been happy with a quiet, pleasant life, doing her best where she could, and marrying someone she loved. That day, Norn was getting food from the storehouse like usual in the superb village. Food was stocked in a storehouse as a shared resource, from which each household took home what they needed to cook. Formerly, the cooking had been done in the village kitchen, with people taking home finished product or eating it there. But the current system had been adopted as a measure against the plague. Accordingly, Norn was taking the ingredients back to Rajard's house. But on that day, she took a little more than usual. Just a day earlier, her older brother had shown up at Rajard's house, accompanied by a demon king with a gigantic appetite and her son. And as a result, they had run out of food. I don't remember them implying that she ate there too. I guess I could see that. Barely able to carry all her supplies with both hands, Norn decided to give her arms a rest and take a break on her way home. She looked around and saw a chair in a perfect spot. What was it doing there? It hadn't been there the other day. But even though she thought this, she reasoned, until the other day, Big Brother and the others were fighting. Maybe someone put down a chair so they could take a rest. She had no particular doubts about it. And so, Norn sat down without a thought. She didn't mean anything by it. And, to re-emphasize, she, of course, had no ambitions. Know where this is going. Based on the title, you know where this is going. Here we go. She sat down. The moment she did, all the people doing their training drills a little way off from the chair stared at her, open-mouthed. It's Atoffs. It's totally Atoffs. But Norn didn't notice. She wasn't sensitive enough to her surroundings for that. Otherwise, she might have an easier life. And Aisha, Wouldn't tease her so much. Hey, Norn, what are you doing here? There, calling out to Norn, was none other than Rudius. Oh, big brother, nothing really. I just sat down to rest for a bit. The bags were so heavy. He nodded. No doubt. All right, I'll carry them for you. Would you? Really? Thank you. Thanks to the magic armor he wore, Rudius was very strong. Even without it, he was still stronger than Norn. As such, she was only too happy to accept his offer. Once, she would have pouted and said, no thank you. But now, perhaps thanks to her stint as a student council president at the University of Magic, she had grown accustomed to relying on people. That's good. That's good. Again, it kind of implied that with the whole, maid cafe thing. This girl's grown up a lot. And again, it stems from the aspect that back there, she was never good enough for people. Everybody else around her were geniuses. Her brother and her sister were geniuses, and everybody was looking down upon her, and she's always feeling like she has to prove herself, and she's always feeling like she's not enough. And so whenever somebody offers help, like Rudius, she feels like crap. She feels weak. She feels inadequate. But again, now she's in a role where that's her duty, is you have to tell other people what to do. You have to divvy out things. You cannot do it yourself. That is the role of a lead. So lead Rudius and tell him to pick up the damn stuff. Yes, she has to reword it. Yes, pick up that stuff, Rudius. Do you want me to help you? Yes, do it. You gotta do it right. You gotta do it right. I like the fact that he doesn't even bring up the throne, though. Doesn't even bring up the throne. She'd need a rest if Big Brother could carry the food for her. She had just begun to stand up when... Uh-oh, too late, said Rudius. Wondering what that meant, Norn looked at him. The squeak slipped out from the back of her throat. This was because the Demon King, Atofe Ratofe, famed even on the Demon Continent as Fear Incarnate, was striding towards them with a swagger. She gonna challenge her to a duel. You! She could probably flatten the likes of Norn with her little finger. She'd probably just be able to snort at her. Overcome by primal fear, Norn cowered, but Rudius took a step forward, protecting her. I'm sorry, Lady Atof. My little sister. She just couldn't help herself. At this, Atof, who looked ready to grab hold of Norn, pulled up short. Couldn't help herself? Yes, she looks up to you see. Oh, smooth. Oh, smooth. 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 You don't say. She does she? What in the world were they talking about? That's right, she doesn't understand them. Norn looked dubiously around them. The superb warriors were watching her anxiously. All the superb warriors are gonna mad respect Norn. They're gonna mad respect Norn. And well, I guess technically they could probably understand what Reese is telling her right now. But either way, I mean, they're probably gonna give her mad respect for this. The one who literally just sat on her throne and didn't even flinch. The superb warriors were watching her anxiously. At last, it hit Norn. Yet again, she had put her foot in something. She just wasn't sure exactly what. In that case, I shall make an exception for her. When I was young, I got in trouble with my father when I tried to steal his throne. I'm sincerely grateful for your generosity. That being said, it's still my throne. Mind you don't get comfortable, eh? Of course. I think she's more than satisfied already. Right, Norn? At Reese's nudge, Norn clicked. This was Atofe's chair. Yes, it was amazing. Thank you very much. Norn jumped to her feet and bobbed her head at Atofe. Then she took hold of her bags, left beside the chair, and got moving in a hurry. Rhea stuck onto her like a bodyguard, meaning she still had to be in danger. Next time you come after my throne, do it to my face. I'll meet your challenge. Yes, ma'am, Norn replied weakly. Wait, so she understood that time? She understood that time? I guess she could be speaking in human tongue. I don't know. No, I think they specifically said that Atof didn't understand human tongue. Norn replied weakly. As she did so, she made a promise to herself. She would not go near it. Never again. Not ever. That was close shave. Oh, big brother, thank you. It's a good thing I noticed first. She's like a really territorial bear. So you gotta watch out for chairs and things. You understand? Please, whenever Etof's in the area, take note of chairs. It was then from that day on, Norn never sat in chairs ever again. Ruiz has noticed at some point that whenever she goes to people's places, she always sits on the ground. How am I supposed to know which chairs and things? Ruiz made a face. See your point. Okay, that was a goofy chapter. Etof is great. Short story, A Parting Gift. There must be something. Norn Greyrat was in a fix. Her big brother had announced that they were withdrawing from the superb village. He had told Norn, in particular, that she was to get home as soon as possible. There was still a lot to sort out here, but the enemy was defeated, and the danger had passed. It was illogical for people who weren't needed on the grounds to gradually withdraw, and only natural that Norn, who had only been acting as a nurse in the village, should lead the way. She was reluctant to leave, but she'd been the one in charge. She would have sent Norn Greyrat home quickly too. She accepted it. It was just how things were. It was, however, undeniably a wrench to be parted from Rajard. Aww. Once she went home, she was sure there would be some time before she saw him again. Rajard had found his people and settled here, and she would return to the magic city of Shariah and go back to her life. She might be able to see him straight away if she wanted to. With teleportation circles, you could travel to far-off places in a literal instant. But the circles were forbidden. She wouldn't be allowed to use them just because she missed Rajard. She might even go the rest of her life without seeing him again. That, Norn knew, was what parting meant. Damn! going down a depressing chapter. Indeed, back in Millis, she had been parted from her father, who she had loved so much, and she had never seen him again. Ow. 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 That cements it. That literally cements it. And I think they've kind of hinted at this before. Again, because when Norn had left her father's side, it was at the defensive side of Rajard. The only reason that she was able to leave him was because of the words that Rajard gave her. And she trusted him. And pretty much turned into like a father figure. Rajard turned into a father figure for Norn. And they traveled up. I mean, there was a little hint there of like the whole, Prince Charming with the moonlight and the shimmer of the gem and all that kind of stuff. The Prince Charming character. But it's like a father figure that he comforted her and brought her all the way up there. And right here, it's hitting at again that she's able to be with Rajard again after so long. And just like back there, parting ways, never got to see him again. Might possibly never get to see Rajard again. A little bit of a trauma there. Some of her classmates from the University of Magic she had been close with had died, and she would never see them again. Damn, how rough is life at the University of Magic? I guess it's been some time. Not being able to see people was just the way of the world. Norn could have liked to spend some more time with those people, if she could. To see them all the time. But sometimes you couldn't, and that was just how things were. Even Norn herself, who knew when she might die in some unexpected accident, and that wasn't the only possibility. It seemed like Rudius was being careful. But as the relative of someone involved in such an intense battle, she might easily find herself targeted. Yeah. Which was why I was so mad that she even came here. It's like, why would you let her come here? Cliff! Norn had no faith in her ability to survive an encounter with anyone who could seriously harm Rudius or the others. Rajard, on the other hand, the legendary warrior, had far better odds of survival, and so Norn, at least, wanted him to remember. She wanted him to remember her. Aww. Aww. When she and Rajard had last parted, he'd given her a figurine of himself. Norn had gotten through many a hard day by gazing at it and thinking back on the conversations they had. That was how important Rajard was to her. Technically, that was the first time that they parted. A little bit of an oofsie there. That was in Millis. In Millis, Rajard gave her a figurine. In the second parting, no, I don't remember a figurine being given to her again. She wanted to leave him something to remind him she existed. Norn, however, had never been quick to the draw. As a result of the many things she learned at the University of Magic, she learned to plan and prepare carefully, and, when it came time for her everyday tasks, to do them as well as if not better than average. However, when she had to do something without any warning like this, it totally threw her. Not having preparation and doing things on the fly is a little bit different. Norn, you aren't ready yet? Aisha's calling. While she was floundering, her time ran out. Rajard, he had come to get her. Norn looked at him miserably. Poor girl. If this had been her younger sister Aisha, she would have completed her objective in next to no time. Still comparing herself, maybe by some method that Norn would have never thought of, using her position in the Wood Cragmire mercenary band to have a present delivered later, for example. Are you looking for something? No, Rather than a thing, it was more accurately to say that she was looking for an idea. What is it? Rajard asked kindly, but when Norn looked up at him, she only got tongue-tied. If Aisha had been here, she would have pressed her to spit out already, but Rajard waited quietly for her. Comparing Rajard to Aisha now? It's like everything has to be measured to Aisha. Poor Norn has to measure everything to Aisha. Finally, Norn found her words. Richard, I, wanted to give you something. Me? Yes. Oh. They fell silent. If Rajard had asked her why, Norn might have been too embarrassed to say anything further. But Rajard waited for her. That was why Norn made herself continue. Rajard, I don't want you to forget me. Aww. Rajard reached out a hand to her. Norn thought that he would stroke her hair, like he always did. Is this going where I think it's going? But contrary to her expectation, Rajard laid his hand on her shoulder, just like with Rudius. Just like with Rudius and Edison. He sees her as an adult. He no longer sees her as a child. Just like Rudius and Edison, back when they parted ways at the Fatoa displacement. She looked up at him and saw him smiling, as if to say she was just as silly as ever. I'm not going to forget you. You aren't? No. Something about you reminds me of my lost wife. How could I forget? Okay, that's pretty much confirmed. Okay, all right. I know where this is going. I mean, it was beating it like a dead horse during this entire incident. It was beating it like a dead horse. Where Fujin's like, get ready. Norn's getting with Rajard. Get ready. They're going to get together. Get ready. Who's Norn marrying? It's going to be Rajard. It's obvious. That cemented it. That cemented it. The hand on the shoulder, and you remind me of my lost wife. I know what you're doing, Fujin. This is way too on the nose. She looked up at him, saw him smiling, as if to say that she was just as silly as ever. Norn nodded, her feelings confused. Norn, the present you give him is literally marry me. Just do it already. I'm mixed on it, by the way. I am so... I mean, I'm fine with whatever. They're, both consenting adults, but it's like... I'm mixed on it because it feels like way back there, she's seen him as, again, like a parental figure. It felt like a guardian parental figure. But again, like I said before, it gave the impression that she's seen him as this Prince Charming character. He just rode in like Prince Charming. Every single time she's ever met him, he always rides in like Prince Charming. Again, when she's out there in the stalls, he comes in and rides in and protects her and saves her. And then again, the next time that she sees him, rides in there and protects her from the evil guy that was about to attack her because he spilled his damn food on his shirt. Some stupid drunk. Rides in and protects her. They have to go up north. Rides in, protects him. Keeps him safe all the way up there. It was only until like the whole plague incident that she suddenly shows up and she wants to do the same for him. I can see her being swept up in him as being just this dashing man that saves her life. This beautiful prince. And again, I don't really see it as a bad thing because she had plenty of time since that whole trip that she got to kind of grow up and become an adult. And now right here, she's meeting him again. And it's seemingly like it's making that choice at this point. And again, a bit on the nose. It's a bit on the nose. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. As long as Nornal's happy. As long as Nornal is happy. I think it's more surprising of the idea of Rajard ever really meeting somebody again. Because that was kind of the sad thing when Rudius first arrived here. And he was all alone. And it felt like he probably would never, find love again. But it could actually be in that whole aspect. He looks at Norn and sees his lost wife. And that's that sign right there of somebody that I loved. I see in Norn right here somebody that I loved. She could not have described what was occurring in her chest, even if she was ordered to. There was a shock, as well as a loneliness and a resignation. Let's meet again. Those were Rajard's parting words to her. You're leaving? Norn, you're leaving? You're leaving? You're leaving? It's got to be in the redundancies. It's got to be in the redundancies then. If it's, I guess technically we can't have like big, massive plot points in side stories. So we're going to leave it in redundant. We'll get it in redundancy. We'll get it later. Next week. Probably next week. Yes. Norn somehow managed to reply. After that, she left him and returned to the magic city of Shiraya. Little did she know, a few months later, they would be reunited, and then would get married. I know. Okay, I got it. I got it, Revision. I know it. I got it. We're good. Rajard x Nornal. Nornal and Rajard sitting in a tree, stabbing invisible wolfies. Sorry, that was cheesy. again, I had my hesitations there, but again, it's been spelling it out ever since she ran to him again at the port city. The dashing Prince Charming sweeps her off her feet. She's basically kind of a similar story as Aisha. Again, Aisha kind of fell in love with Rudius because he kind of swept her off her feet, protected her, was so talented, got all doki doki. With Aisha, she grew up, and I think eventually she realizes that it's her brother. With Norn, Rajard comes in, sweeps her off her feet, and she's like all doki doki for him. But she grows up and she realizes that this is somebody that she wants to be with. And I do like the fact that there is a bit in this chapter kind of emphasizing why Rajard is so different. Why Rajard's so different. It has several points that's noting why Rajard's so different than everybody else. Anybody else would nag her, get the answer out, would press her on getting an answer. But Rajard always waits. Rajard is extremely patient with her. And it's something that she doesn't really get in experience with other people. There's an expectation with other people. It's really what it is. With Aisha, it's prodding. With Rui, is expectation. Everybody around her, there's an expectation for what she does. But again, Rajard just waits and listens. He's a very patient guy. He's always been a very patient guy. Even with Rudius and Edison, when they were traveling together, he never really pressed them much. He just kind of went with them. And again, if he never confronted Rajard was just going to fall from the shadows. We'll see. We'll see, though. In one of the redundancy chapters, Norn falls in love. Exclusive new story, the dedication ceremony for Fatoa Castle. So again, it implies, and I think I've seen it in the back of this book. Yeah. And I think somebody mentioned this at some point, and I kind of got the idea of it. But there's like a full-on like breakdown of where all these short stories were in. So this is literally just bringing all these little short stories together. Like Selfie's father was Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation manga adaptation, volume 1 at the end of the volume. So it says like wherever all these are. So this is the only one that's exclusive then, I guess. Yeah. Interesting. That would explain why it's so long. So let's get into it. Fatoa had lost everything in the displacement, and sadly I had no chance to actually break this down. I only formatted it, so I know sort of what they're talking about in here, but this is going to be completely fresh for me. It's going to be completely fresh for me. Fatoa had lost everything in the displacement incident. Many more lives were lost in its recovery. After getting back on his feet, Saros Boreas Greyrat was executed for palace intrigue, and Senior Minister Darius, who had sought to seize control of Fatoa by funding the recovery, met his end after losing a power struggle. If the successor to the throne, Ariel Anemoi Asra, had not declared she would support the recovery, it would likely not have progressed nearly as far. Yes, Fatoa's recovery was quiet and steady. It was overshadowed by the turbulence of the times, though sometimes those in power offered their support. One day in the lands at the center of Fatoa, they had once been the site of the citadel of Roa, and where the town called Reborn Roa now lay, a building was completed. It was a castle. Okay, maybe it wasn't big enough to be called a castle. It was the size of a fort at best, or, if you would be comparing it to a noble district in the capital of Asura, maybe a mansion. All the same, it had been an indispensable feature of the center of Roa before the disaster. After the site had been lined up, it was a long time before construction began. James Boreas Greyrat, the current lord of the region, did not see it as necessary for the recovery. He stayed away from Fatoa. But when construction began, it showed the people that the recovery was going smoothly. Like a symbol of hope. Like a construction, like an actual fort being like a symbol of hope. Some sort of feeling that there's security. When it was completed, the people who worked on the recovery thought, we've made it this far at last. Yeah. It could also be sort of seeing something that is like the days of old. Like some sort of vision of the past. These lands have a mansion for a great and important lord to live in again. Yep. Because of this, Lord James decided to hold a dedication of the castle in a great fashion. He put on celebrations throughout the entire town, invited a great many nobles to the newly completed mansion, and applied to Queen Ariel Anemoi Asra for permission to hold dedication ceremony. Ariel was only too happy to consent and decree that all the nobles present would attend. I'm gonna force them all to go. The news also reached Renoa and Rudius Greyrat. All right then, let's get the strategy meeting underway. Okay, yeah. It was nighttime in the Greyrat household, and 3 women had gathered in one bedroom. This was the Greyrat Girls Club, which they held regularly enough to have lost count of the number of times. Usually, most of the women took part, but this time, there was only 3 in attendance. Selfie, the club president, introduced the topic for discussion. We're going to attend a party in Reborn Roa. What about it? These days, Edison was comfortable with going to these sorts of parties. What she meant was, if we go, we'll just do what we often do, right? What's there to discuss? Sylvie understood this, of course. Well, listen to the end. So, on paper, this party is a celebration of Fatoa's recovery. But I think really, it's to make sure that everyone knows how well the recovery is going, and that the Boreas family is back in power again. Is that right? Edis turned to Roxy, who sat beside her. It's no good asking me, Roxy replied. But as a rule, humans don't throw parties for no reason. I know there's usually some political motivation involved, like making a show of authority, or showing off a relationship. Do demons have parties for no reason? Oh, yes, especially demon kings. Those sound more fun. Edis is like, I want to hang out with the demons. With Rajard and the other demons. They're more fun. You'll know she's probably thinking of Etov. She's thinking of Etov. That was a fun party. She's like, hell yeah. Well, from what I hear, they mean no end of hardship for the people who organize them. Though, given that they're purely for enjoyment, I suppose they would be fun. But I'm from a countryside, so I've never attended one. She would have been at the Etov one. She would have been at the Etov one. What the hell? I am. Sylvie cleared her throat. The other two sat up straight, then indicated for her to continue. Usually the three of us attend these sort of occasions as Rudy's wives. That is, not as nobles, but as Queen Ariel's guests. Because nearly all the nobles know that Rudius was instrumental in putting Queen Ariel on the throne. There have never been any serious issues beyond gossip behind our backs. A significantly embellished version of the story of how Ariel Animoy Astra had claimed the throne was now known far and wide. In particular, the story of the dramatic showdown when Pedagoose went to Astra Castle had been dressed up so spectacularly that rumors had sprung up, Ariel physically throwing out all the nobles who stood in her way, which had set all the nobles who were hostile towards her trembling. Because of this, few would openly speak out or act against Ruiz' household, who were the ones who had orchestrated it. But this time is different. That's because this time, there will also be a lot of mid-ranking, rural nobles in attendance who can't go to court at Astra Castle. Mid-ranking, rural nobles, in other words. There would be masses of people who didn't really understand Rudius and Ariel's relationship, or what the high-ranking nobles who interact daily with the royalty were afraid of, and what they held back. As such, I would like to prepare now for what people might say to us, and the attitude we ought to adopt before there's any trouble. Especially you, Edis. Why me? Recently, how she conducted herself couldn't be said to have improved. But if nothing else, no one was brave enough to find fault with her when she attended parties in the capital at Ruiz's side. Because you're a descendant of the Boreas family, which puts you in the trickiest position. I think you'll likely have some odd types bothering you. I'm not a Boreas anymore. That's true. But details like that don't matter. Not when people want to find fault with someone they don't like. You understand, right? Yeah, I get that. Edis cared just as little. She also didn't care about details when people found fault with her. Fights were decided in an instant, and if you bother with stuff like that, you lost. That makes sense. Yeah, and again, it makes sense that Edis herself doesn't really care about this whole situation, but Sylphie's trying to kind of press it upon her. Typically, with a lot of situations where she's gone into a lot of these locations, parties and whatnot, it probably very rarely is going to involve, I mean, especially if it's another continent altogether, a completely different kingdom, it's often not going to involve people that know her directly or even know who she is. They're just going to know her as a very powerful swordsman. But we're actually going into a territory where the Boreas is, and it's going to be involving all that stuff. So all of those people are going to be wanting to bug her. They're going to know who she is. They're going to know where she's from, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to make it worse. But from Edis's perspective is, why would I want to care about that stuff? Because that just makes me pause and think about something when all I should focus on is the attack. But you can't kill people in there, Edis. Not yet, anyways. Seeing that Edis understood, Sylphie gave a satisfied nod. Good, then let's do our best not to make any trouble for Rudy. Edis folded her arms and nodded. Gotcha. Really, if the party was going to be that bad, they also had the option not to go. There was no need for Rudy's family to carry out the obligations of Astra nobility. True. But this party was the anniversary party for Fatoa recovery. But that's the thing. Do any of them have any connections anymore? I mean, there was quite a bit of a sense of nostalgia going through them when they were traveling through there. But obviously Edis didn't care at all. Edis had wanted nothing to do with it. But it felt like Sylphie was kind of giving a sense of nostalgia there, as she was trying to pull something out of Edis, but Edis kept kind of rejecting it. But it still gave a sense there that was something there that she cared about. But again, she gave all that up. She didn't care about it anymore. Edis and Roxy had once lived in that region, and its lands held fond memories, so they wanted to attend it if possible. For Rudius and Sylphie, this went without saying. Did Rudius give it? I don't think that was anything with Rudius, though. I don't think I really felt much. I would have to go back and look. I don't remember there being really anything for Rudius. I think it was just Selfie, and Edis felt like it almost like she didn't want to care. Edis and Roxy had once lived in that region, and its lands held fond memories, so they wanted to attend if possible. For Rudius and Selfie, this went without saying. Don't worry, parties this big don't happen every day. So long as nothing turns into a really serious problem, Queen Ariel and I will take care of things. Selfie had called them to this meeting because attending this sort of party meant something. She was sure that Rudy would have said the same. All right, first of all. And so the night went by in the bedroom in the Grey Rat house. Again, it's odd. Edison shouldn't care. Rudy, I don't think really much cares. A good example is that when it came to the whole situation with Ariel, he just wanted to get back home. Where was his home? Up north. That became his home. After the Fatoa displacement incident, he didn't really have any ties to that place anymore. He was all about his home up there. It was a home that he established with Selfie, and then he brought everybody, his entire family, into that home. That is his home. Fatoa isn't. Sure, if he could see the streets of Buena again, he might have that nostalgia of going down the street with Roxy or playing that tree with Selfie, but that's all gone. It's all gone. Literally all of it's gone, despite the fact the anime wanted ruins and stuff like that. It's gone. The day arrived. A great crowd was gathered in a courtyard of the newly constructed mansion in Reborn Roa. There was high-ranking nobles who had come all the way from the capital, mid-ranked nobles who resided in Fatoa, and nobles from neighboring regions who had supported the recovery. And it wasn't all nobles. Key members of organizations who had worked on the recovery, as well as merchants who had laid down their personal fortunes to help out, also received special permissions to attend. The party began with a speech from James Boreas Greyrat, but his words sounded somehow empty. Duh. It was as though he was simply rattling off lines that sounded good. To be fair, that was a given. No one could accuse James Boreas Greyrat of making a great effort towards Fatoa recovery. All the same, those who had worked on the recovery were deeply moved when Alphonse, damn, been time. That's been some time. The old man standing at James' side began to weep. They knew he was the one who carried on with the late Saurus Boreas Greyrat's wishes. It was he who had taken on the role of leader, a role he continued to fulfill in the present. It was he, a mere servant, who had gone around talking to all sorts of people, offering encouragement or lending a hand as required. He had brought people together, and all the while patiently persisted in bringing the recovery to the attention of his lord, who was apathetic towards it. Now he stood weeping at his lord's side, not as a servant, but as one who had done a great service. Just seeing him there made the party worthwhile for those who were working on the recovery. I'm surprised he's still kicking. That's, to be perfectly honest, I'm surprised he's still kicking. I mean, it's only been like, what, 15 years at this point, I think? Or no, more like almost 20 years. He wasn't that old. He looks like anime old. After the speech, the party continued smoothly. Ariel spoke after James, and then a Millis blessing was conducted. After that came the introduction of a band, followed by the introduction of the head chef, Randolph? Then the party transitioned into a sort of stand-up dinner party common in Ashra. The style had come into fashion after Ariel's accession to the throne, and it had been well received by many nobles especially at well-attended parties like this one. It made it easy to approach the high-ranking nobles when wanting to curry favor with. This style did have its problems, however, in particular when there was a massive difference in rank between attendees, as at this party. People would talk to those who, by rights, they did not permit to address. So you're that Edison woman who used to be a Boreas Greyrat? Indeed, the trouble Selfie had been afraid of was unfolding then and there. The buffet was open, and Edison made a beeline for it, for the whole roasted hog. That was when trouble closed in. Usually, Rudius would have been at her side to block off such pests. My husband, oi, what do you say to my wife? Hey, where did you come from? You know Queen Ariel and I are friends, yeah? That threat would have cleared out any malcontents in no time. But alas, Rudius was paying his respect to Alphonse, and wasn't there to watch after Edison as he should have been. Edison had no choice but to deal with this one herself. To her, the man speaking to her was a stranger. She didn't know that it was a second son of a mid-ranking noble, who resided in the corner of Milbots, not far from Fatoa. His family had been originally low-ranking nobles, with no lands of their own. But after the destruction of the Fatoa region, they had provided aid to the refugees who had come to Milbots looking for work, furnishing them with accommodations and employment. In recognition for their deeds, his family had been elevated to mid-ranking nobility. That's cool. That's cool. Sort of kind of giving benefit to a lot of people to help these individuals out. Because again, what's the point in them actually helping? Why do they even have to open their doors to them? Because again, Fatoa is flattened. Completely flattened. There's nothing there. They have to rebuild soil and everything. And so they're going to need places to stay. People are going to want to, when they're returning whatever, they're needing places to live, places to eat or whatnot. Maybe they're not strong enough to be able to survive within those lands, and they decide to vacate the lands when they return. When they return, they have no reason to accept them in, so it's good that there's some sort of benefit for them for doing that. They're rewarded for it. They got on to take on various odd jobs related to recovery, which had brought them the attention of James and Ariel. The local nobility also regarded them with interest. The son, however, once everyone suddenly began fawning over him, following the abrupt improvements in his father's position, had started getting some funny ideas. Got right to his head. That's right. Edis didn't know any of that. She was just doing as they practiced. I heard that you, a lady of the Grey Rat family, went and married a backwater noble or something. That's right. They taught her to just say yes. They taught her to just say, you're right. That's what it's going to be. You're right. You're right. Yep, you're right. We'll see. Dear me, all that talk of the Boreas Grey Rats about recovery. But now, I see, they bought it by whoring out their own flesh and blood. He scoffed. How our greatest family has fallen. Yes, quite right. Yep, quite right. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Under normal circumstances, talking like that about a great noble family like the Boreas Grey Rats would have not been tolerated. The man could have even been executed then and there for his disrespect. But his family had provided aid to the Boreas Grey Rats during the recovery at great hardship to themselves. Basically, this guy saw it like this. Even if I say a bit more than I should to one of the Boreas Grey Rats, the worst that could happen is my father gets some flack. I'll get a pass in the end. Edis didn't know any of that. She wanted to eat the roasted hog while it was sizzling hot, and she was considering punching out this annoying man her way. But Selfie had told her firmly that she was not to punch anyone, so Edis was patient. Her sword training had taught her endurance. That being said, she hadn't got any better at learning or remembering, and she couldn't apply what she did learn to save her life. So she had no idea what she was supposed to do in the situation. At this rate, the party was going to be showered in the body's worth of blood. Edis had learned endurance, but she had also learned to counterattack at top speed without her brain getting in the way. The nobles nearby watched them uncomfortably. Most of the mid-ranking nobles who knew the second son didn't know Edis. They were unsure whose side to take without knowing the relationship between the two. On top of that, they were afraid that if they stuck their noses in, that would only bring trouble down on their heads. This is turkey. Edis. Someone ran over to her. She turned, then recognized who it was. She called out with delight. Ghislaine! Tall with red-brown skin, big ears, and the muscles Ruius described as like steel. Ghislaine was getting on in the years, but still was in good shape. God damn. It's been so long. I haven't seen Ghislaine in so long. I mean, we'd had the chapter at the very beginning of this book that she was starving to death, but like new stuff. We knew that she was almost starving and Edis saved her. Sword King Ghislaine, the Queen's guard dog from the 7 Knights of Osra. They were the Golden Knights or something like that. Did they change the name already? Personal bodyguard to Ariel Anemoy Osra, and one of the greatest swords fighters in Osra, came over to Edis, then looked down at the noble who was harassing her with a crooked smile. This guy must be very brave to tangle with you. Really and truly, another voice chimed in to agree with Ghislaine. Another woman stood hidden in Ghislaine's shadow. If it were me, I'd plea and cry and say I didn't want to. Even if the Majesty herself ordered it. The cost of picking a fight with this one's more than I can afford. It was Water Emperor Isolde Cluel, the King's Shield in the 7 Knights of Osra. Interesting, so she joined that group too. I mean, it's not a shocker. Seems like an inevitability. It was either that or she was going to be the instructor. Like, she was currently working as the instructor. Eventually, she would move over. A captain or something. Instructor, captain, instructor. She was another of Osra's best sword fighters. What's your deal? The noble shrank away from the two of them, taking a step back. We're friends of Edis's. You don't know us, sir? How should I? Picking a fight with someone you don't even know in Osra Kingdom. Isolde sighed. Ghislaine, Edis, what do you say that we show mercy to him for his bravery and settle on only throwing him out of here? Throw me out? Just who do you think I am? If it wasn't for us Tillmans, Patoa's recovery would never... How about you tell me who you think this woman is? Isolde's face was dead serious. The noble shrank back even further. Well, she's just, that girl from the has-been Boreas family. The one they said was a problem child. Yep. Come right back. They can't let it go. You are entirely mistaken. Isolde replied promptly, but that couldn't be right, the noble thought. He didn't know the exact details, but he was sure she was only one of those good-for-nothings who often cropped up in noble families, who had married some foreign magician who wasn't even a noble. Who is she? Isolde smiled faintly at his confusion. By all means, go out and find out for yourself, before you ruin that family you're so proud of, that is. She said that with a grin. The noble realized that his feet had left the ground. Ghislaine had picked him up by the scruff of his neck. Hey, what are you doing? Put me down. Let go. Without a word, Ghislaine lifted him over her head, swung, and released. The noble sailed through an open window, letting out a wail that ended in a croak like a frog as he vanished from the sight, and by the sounds of it, landed in a hedge. Edison watched him go, then turned back to the other two. I thought she could turn to the pig and start scraping. Hey, it's been ages. Thanks for helping me out. It really has, Edis. I was on tenterhooks, wondering when you were going to punch him. Selfie told me don't punch people in places like this. Does that mean that if she didn't say anything to you, you would have punched him? Yes. Obviously. Anyways, let's eat already. It's getting old. Yes, let's. Ghislaine's stomach has been rumbling so loudly. Bothering you, did I? My apologies. They laughed together. Cute. I like that. That little last part there is actually really good. Bothering you, did I? My apologies. They all laugh together. Ghislaine's got a little sense of humor there, kind of building up more and more. Still waiting to find out who she marries. Dude, if Ghislaine doesn't get with somebody by the end of the series, I'm like mad. Who was I thinking? Was it Sander? No, I thought Sander was going to get with Ariel, but they kind of got rid of that idea. I don't mind Sander. He's a good dude. I would like him with Ghislaine. There's Soldat. Soldat's too young, though. So Soldat would be fine, I guess. He's older at this point. He's very old at this point. Laughing together, the three of them dug into the roasted hog. Not a soul tried to say anything untoward to Edis. Not with Ghislaine and his soul at her side, nope. Well, that wasn't quite accurate. There was one. Two men who had been watching from a distance now approached, drawn by the sound of the wailing. One was on the other side of old age, while the other was a youth. The old man regarded Edis with a somewhat conflicted expression until, at a word of admonishment from the younger, he slowly moved towards her. Lady Edis. The old man, Alphonse, came up to her, then gave a short bow. You have grown into a fine young woman. I am truly glad to see you're well. Alphonse. Edis stood up straighter. She had known that Alphonse would be at the party, but she had been thinking that if she ever ran into him, there was something she ought to say. The only thing was that after discarding the name of Boreas and running away from her duty to Fatoa's recovery, she knew she had no right to say it. Of course, even if she had stayed, there was probably nothing she could have done other than marry off to some nobleman, but she understood now, more or less, that that had been her duty as a noble. It was straight up Darius. Straight up Darius. That was his plan, was Darius. It was straight up Darius. So eventually Radius would have come and saved her. He would have killed Darius and saved Edis. Well, actually, the question there would have been if Rus would have been able to take on Darius and all that without Edis at his side. So she knew that she was in no position to say what she was going to say. At the same time, there was no one else to do it, and so she said it. She said it because her father, or rather, her grandfather, could not. She said it as the last of the Boreas Grey Rats, who had lived in Fatoa. Since you took over to see Grandpa's wishes carried out, it's amazing how far the recovery has come. Thank you for all your work. Damn. Damn. This is a surprise moment. This is honestly a surprise moment. That she would even say this. Again, this is one of those moments where it kind of out of nowhere says Edis thinks about things a lot more than you think she does. That you think that she's so single-minded. All she can think about is Rudy getting stronger. But yet she's here. It didn't seem like she really had much of a problem back there when Selfie was talking about it. Hey, we're going to go to this party. It's for the Fatoa thing. Didn't give any indication that she's like, no, I don't want to go there. I hate that place. All I care about is where Rudy's at. It really just comes down to the idea that Rudy's going there, and you have to go too, so here's some things you need to worry about. Okay, if Rudy's going, I'm going. But this, again, is similar to the whole situation with Selfie and Edis traveling by the Fatoa region, is that confirmation that she did care about it. Not necessarily cared, but she wanted to fulfill some sort of duty. And there it technically says that she technically felt she had no responsibility or no right to say anything about it because she ditched it. But she knows that her father's dead, knows that her mother's dead, knows that her grandfather's dead. I have to do this. For a while, Alphonse stared blankly at Edis. Then, tears began to flow down from his cheeks. "Thank you," he said. He had sworn his loyalty to Saros, served Philip, and worked himself to the bone, all for the sake of the Boreas family and Fatoa. Then Fatoa had been destroyed. Saros and Philip died, and Edis left. Some days, he didn't know why he worked so hard for the recovery. Saros. 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 That's why I was so conflicted with this dude. And it's like, even I did my tier list, it's like, I don't really like him because he was planning on giving her to Darius. But at the same time, I understood from that political perspective, there's no choice. There's no real choice here. If he wanted to help, seek out this dream or rebuild it, he's got to do something like that. Yeah. Some nights he had lain awake, questioning himself. He never found any answers, nor had he forgotten how Edis had left rather than fulfill Saros and Philip's dying wishes. An emptiness had remained inside him after the mansion had been completed. Truly, a fine young woman. Your husband must be very happy. Despite all that, those simple words from Edis made him feel whole again. It means a lot from Edis. I mean, come on. This is like the most boldest and sympathetic thing that Edis has ever really said. And it's for Alphonse. And again, I think she's just speaking for Saros. It's just speaking for Saros. His heart was full of feelings he could not put into words. He felt as though everything he had done for the recovery had been leading him to this. Yes, on that day, Alphonse knew it had all been worth it. A cute little end to his story, I guess. Out of the corner of her eye, Roxy watched the upset around Edis, then let a sigh of relief. She had been worried, what with everything Selfie had said beforehand. But there had been no need. Even Edis had plenty of friends in the Ostra Kingdom. There were lots of people around to help her out. It's like everybody knows how she is, so they have to babysit her. Roxy's like, is it my turn? Nope. She got some friends over here to take care of it. Good. I can go over here and eat some sweets. Yes. It embarrassed her to think that she had been readying herself to step in on Edis's behalf if it came down to that. But in any case, the trouble had passed. Now, just as planned, all that was left was to partake in the enormous cake. I knew it. Go get it, Edis. Go get it, Roxy. Get it, girl. Get it. The sigh. It's legit. Roxy is legit Frerin. Roxy's legit Frerin. Guys, like, you want to go dance too? Cake. Top it. I want to eat the cake. Frerin's over here. I just want to eat cake. Leave me alone. All that was left was to partake in an enormous cake the size of a grown, miggered man that she had been eyeing up since the food was served. I can just see her watching Edis, and every now and then, just glance over to see if it's still there. Things like going around and greeting people could be left to Rudius and Selfie. If anything, she thought it'd be better that she didn't partake in any of that sort of thing. Is it going to get into the fact that she feels like she'd be discriminated against anyways? Roxy was well aware of how she looked. Yep. If she followed them around as they greeted everyone, she would get funny looks, perhaps even patronizing comments. But Roxy was forgetting something. Here, what's a demon child doing in a place like this? Must have snuck in from somewhere. She had forgotten that she was, if anything, more conspicuous on her own. Poor Roxy. This little child in the corner. Get this child out of here. Here we go. Can I please just have some cake? Roxy didn't panic. She's like, I just want my cake and go eat my damn cake. This is what my sweets. Just go to my court. Just give me a piece. Ah, damn it. Okay, hold on. Yes. She just wants to take it to a corner and just eat. She was used to this sort of thing. No matter where she went, there was always someone who couldn't pass up the chance to be racist to demons or Roxy. I don't believe I've had the pleasure of your acquaintance. My name is Roxy M. Greyrat. Roxy wasn't Edis. She was the type to put what she learned to proper use. To discourage them, she greeted them with proper Austrian manners, then mentioned the Greyrat name. If they were an Austrian noble of good sense, the name of Greyrat ought to put them off. And even if they didn't know who she was, a demon with the name Greyrat would make them leave her be, rather than risk provoking her. What is that supposed to mean at the end there? What is that supposed to mean? If they don't know what the Greyrat name is, I guess the Greyrat name is The name Grey Rats is the family of the Grey Rats. A Boreas Grey Rat, Noto's Grey Rat. They're in high nobility. But if they don't know who those Grey Rats are, at least a demon with the Grey Rat name, they'll probably know who she is because, again, Rudius. A Grey Rat, you say? I'm married to Rudius Grey Rat of Vernoa. If this person didn't understand, she would simply state her relationship with Rudius plainly. You know, Rudius, he enjoys Ariel's favor. You know what that means, don't you? If he went on jeering at her for being a demon after that, she only had to introduce him to one of her acquaintances nearby. Excuse me, this guy really doesn't like the wife of Rudius. Happily, she saw many familiar faces. Then I suppose you must be Roxy M. Greyrat, King Tier Water Magician and Adventurer Extraordinaire. Yes, I suppose. Of course, you never knew how things would really play out, and the Roxy who put together the treatise on learning methods of silent spellcasting and truncating incantations, right? Yes, I wrote that. What about it? Roxy, reeling a little at these unexpected questions, looked up to see a nervous-looking man with pronounced cheekbones. In the depths of his eyes, she thought she saw not scorn or hatred, but something else altogether. Admiration? I thought for a minute this ends up being Randolph. I'm gonna be so... because I've just recorded this twice because I just found out that it's a guy that's talking to her. Because they don't say gender or anything. Gonna record the whole thing with the Randolph voice. And the Roxy who put together that treatise. That look was why she didn't appeal to someone she knew for aid. Do you really believe, my good lady, that so long as one practices from a young age, anyone may learn to perform silent casting? I wouldn't say anyone, but it should be possible for most people. The man had sounded like he disagreed, which made Roxy a little cross, but she did her best to reply calmly. Engaging with people who wanted to prove her wrong was a bad habit of hers, but here it was the way the man had looked at her that made her decide to talk to him. In that case, why did you add abridged incantations, what one might call a degraded form of silent casting, to your treatise? Was it not the case that you, unable to master silent spellcasting yourself, did not wish to lose your superior position? That's a very thoughtful... It jabs at the pride, but it's logical question. Like, well, sure. I mean, I had to survive. I had to do this because I couldn't do this. But there was a sense of that when she couldn't learn silent casting, but Rudius could. She wanted that. She wanted that. This young boy's got it, and she couldn't do it. She wanted to. Not at all. You have to practice in order to cast silent spells with your hands or feet, or from a staff or the like. If you lose any of those, or if your mental state becomes significantly unstable, it is possible to fail to cast it correctly. With incantations, however, the process is half automatic, so the spell may still work even in such a state. That being so, it is rational to study both methods. What? 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 What are we talking? What? Okay, let me go back to what he said. In that case, based on this treatise, in that case, why did you add abridged incantations? What I'm assuming there is shortening incantations, which she has had to learn to do. What one might call a degraded form of silent spellcasting. Again, what Rudius is able to do. Pew, 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 pew. Not even having to chant. But it's saying that you're applying it with it. You're adding to it. She doesn't have two separate ones. She put abridging into the silent spellcasting thing. She's saying you have to practice in order to cast silent spells with your hands or your feet, or from a staff or the like. If you lose... Oh! What? Did they ever establish that before? What she's saying is to do silent casting, you have to send the cast through your hands, practice through your hands, through your feet, staff, wand, an object, or a limb. You have to practice it for those. Rudius, and this, I feel like they're applying this to that. Rudius learned when he lost his arms, he couldn't do jack squat. It screwed him. He couldn't cast spells anymore. Galfailing disabled him because of that. If you lose any of those, or your mental state becomes significantly unstable, it is possible to fail to cast the spells correctly. With incantations, however, the process is half automatic, so the spell may still work even in such a state. So is that implying that, one, you go to cast it through a staff or something like that, and you're doing the incantation, and halfway through it, it can still automatically go through. Like, it can still flow and still complete. I would assume you still have to do the full incantation. You have to say the whole thing. Technically, no, because, that's the whole thing with cumulonimbus. And lightning. You're literally just extending it more. Why do you get cumulonimbus? You don't do the full incantation. It's still a spell. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So the idea here is that, yes, technically with a staff or whatever in hand, with an incantation, you can still finish the process, even if you lost it. Even if you lost the staff. Whereas again, silent spell casting, apparently, if you lose one of those limbs, you're screwed. Or, two, does it mean the idea that you could vocally say it still? You can just say the spell. You may not have to actually aim it. I wouldn't think that's the case, because there was so much emphasis on how it flows out of a limb. I don't know. I want to know what this means. It sounds interesting. I'm sorry. I geek out on this stuff. That being so, it is rational to study both methods. And that's the key thing there. There's no reason not to do both. Especially since you're not going to be able to learn every single spell silently as a young child. Your mana pool, the time that you have. Eventually you're going to need to know how to actually do incantations later on so that when you do learn bigger spells, you can still figure out how to use them. The noble blinked a few times at Roxy when she finished, took a deep breath, then let it out. Then he got down on his knees, looked her in the eye, and held out his hand to her. I am Platio, Navidog. Navidog? I'm Platio, Navidog, Chancellor of the Austrian Institute of Magic. I can't express how honored I am at the chance to meet a great magician of such eminence. For all that was uttered in ignorance, I hope that you'll forgive my earlier rudeness. The fact is, so little is known of your appearance that many claim your name falsely. Interesting. I would imagine that Rudius would have told everybody. Well, of course, Rudius describing Roxy, people will get some crazy ideas. Oh no, I don't mind. It reminded me of the back and forth I had with my master long ago. Cool. At this sudden shift in the man's demeanor, Roxy too adjusted her tone. So he was testing me, she thought, with private relief. Thank goodness, I answered him properly. When you say, Master, do you refer to Vice Principal Genius of the Renault University of Magic? I met him once, and what a humble fellow he was. I suppose he was the same when we had these sorts of debates with his students. No, back then, he was very short-tempered, as was I, for the matter. But after looking back on my mistakes, I realized that it's no good simply standing above everyone else. Roxy took the man's outstretched hand. A handshake. How humans greet each other. Oh, nice. Going from another person that's going to discriminate against demons. Here we go. A handshake. Something between two humans. Cool. But Platio looked down at her with a doubtful expression. For a few seconds, he didn't move. But then he uttered, I see, and gripped her hand in return. Is something wrong? No. I only saw the back of your hand and thought that seeing as you appear to be a lady, I ought to. Then I remembered you are married. Oh, I was gonna even kiss her hand. Jeez. Getting frisky, dude. Oh, yes. My husband might be unhappy if you did that. It would be like on the other side of the hall. Reese is on the other side of the hall and he's looking the opposite direction away from her and talking with some guy, and Ariel's next to him and Selfie's over here and they're just talking and they're just jabbing on with some noble. And then this guy way on the other side of the building, 100 miles away. And Reese's it's I sense the goddess has been touched. Even right here, shake of the hand, he's probably over there just little blood vessel pops. What a frightening thought. But in any case, I am very glad to have met you. Your name is even more widely known than Master Rudius's. That's Rudius's fault. I have wanted to talk to you for a long time. You have? Yes, I'm afraid it's a very pragmatic concern. But I admit, with some embarrassment, that I am interested in King Tier water magic, and so if possible, for my future reference, though I fully realize the impertinence of my request, and I am related, if distantly, to Blue Wolf family. Interesting. So I believe I can offer you appropriate compensation. You want me to show you? Well, Platio's eyes moved to something behind Roxy, and he swallowed his next words. Roxy turned around. There, with a disturbingly fake smile, was Rudius. I told you, he's way over there, and he literally just touched her hand, and he just goes... The blood vessel pops. The little... That little fake smile. Hi. Hello. Rudy? What is it, Master Roxy? Your face look is... That look on your face is terrifying. Rudy, what's wrong? Your face. Is that right? Rudius rubbed his cheeks, then pushed the corners of his mouth, which were outstretched uncannily upwards, back down. It's just, I see my beloved wife, my teacher, the guiding light of my life, with some low life hanging off of her. Damn, dude, chill the out. So I came over only to find it's someone who fully apprehends the situation. And, well, I couldn't help it. You're getting creepy again, Rudy. Are you saying that I'm not always creepy? Don't be like that, please. Sorry. Rudy has cleared his throat. How about it, Roxy? After all Miss Platio has said, why don't you give him a king-tier water magician show? Platio looked up with a start. Would you really? Nothing would make me happier. The rulers of Asura give so little support to magic that we have no one who can cast king-tier magic. None of us so much as laid eyes on such a person. But it's not only about king-tier magic. I have learned that the beauty of your spellcasting outshines even other educators of the Renoa University of Magic. May I beg a demonstration of your refined technique? Damn. The rulers of Asura give so little support to magic? No? Ariel's changing all that stuff? Question mark? I mean, she's doing that, but it's not as if it's all happened already. This is something that she's putting together. I mean, literally, the Institute, I think, was established by her. So they're still building it up. I think by rulers, they mean by the idea of, like, the nobility and whatnot, the people that rule each of the area of the lands, the head families. It could be talking about that as well. It's just not quite there yet. She's working on it. She's working on it. Who's been saying all that? No, I can guess. Roxy. Rudius watching, grinning, as Pladio went on with such enthusiasm that he might have been about to apply to be her apprentice. Whenever some exaggerated story of Roxy's talents went around, it was usually his fault. Yep. Well, if you insist, I suppose it couldn't hurt. All the same, Roxy was not a woman who was indifferent to praise. Ruiz disappeared like a mirage before reappearing a few moments later with her staff. Here, show him how great you are. She took it and headed for the balcony. Then she raised the staff to point it out the window. Then she stopped short. Wait, should I do this now? Is there a time and place to show the world the true extent of your powers? Of course there is. Even so, you're very busy, Master. And I imagine it won't be easy for Mr. Platio to come all the way to Renoa. Surely I could just go to Asura. Summon you just so you can demonstrate king-tier water magic? I won't stand for it. I mean, I wouldn't mind just tagging along when you have your business here, Rudy. But, oh, alright. But where should I aim? After how far the recovery has come, I'd feel really awful if it got swept away with a flood. That's true. That's true. I guess it just depends how close they've been building that stuff. For just a moment, Rudius looked sad to have lost his chance for a date. You kind of screwed up there. She legit was like, I could just tag along with you when you go here. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we should wait. You might damage. Yeah, crops. Yeah, we'll just set something up later. Sorry, dude. Later. Yeah, okay, I'll call you. But he recovered himself, then pointed to the forest in the distance. Somewhere over there should work, right? They're planning on developing it, but apparently, negotiations with the Woodcutting Guild have been rough, so they won't be able to start for a while. I doubt anyone would complain if your spell wipes out a forest. I'm not you, Rudy. I don't have that kind of power. Well, in any case, as they spoke, Roxy raised her staff. The nobles nearby looked at her with slight alarm, but Rudius was so unfazed that Roxy didn't notice. She began her incantation. O spirits of the magnificent waters, I beseech thee, Prince of Thunder, I call upon you, mighty spirit of light, Lord of the heavens, grant me my wish, and as thy divine hammer strikes its anvil, cover the land with water. If you knew, you knew. If you didn't, you were out of luck. Roxy shortened the incantation of the king-tier water spell as though it were nothing. Do you see your sworn enemy in all of his arrogance? I would be the holy blade that strikes him down. Let your radiant power teach him that the Emperor yet reigns supreme. The prayer that she had recited not only had been substantially shortened compared to the original incantation, it was also optimized. This was undoubtedly the result of Roxy's ongoing hard work and research. That was why Rudius clasped his hand together like he was praying and made goo-goo eyes at her. She's so cool. That's my master. That's my master. That's my... Hey, you. Watch what she's doing. Hey, get up here. Come on, go up there. So dorky. He's a dork. He's like our biggest fan. But yeah, this kind of gets me kind of excited for something to be beyond this story because it seems to imply a lot. I mean, obviously for Rios' children, like to see where their story goes. It's obviously see what's happens in Anahoshi in the end. It's interesting to kind of note what happens to the man god, Orsted. I mean, there's so much story left to kind of get into beyond Rios' story. But it's like getting into the idea that Roxy has technically been developing her spells even more so than it was before, shortening incantations and optimizing the spell. By what effect? Like the speed, whatnot? The amount of mana, the efficiency of the mana, I guess is what it's getting into in a minute. Roxy's shortened incantation produced spells more efficiently than Ruiz' silent spell casting. Interesting. I mean, but Ruiz doesn't really care because he's got a massive mana pool, but interesting that she's more efficient now because that was Roxy's biggest problem. I mean, we don't know if she's still able to kind of develop a bigger mana pool. Again, being that Megurians live longer, is their childhood kind of extended for producing more mana pool? But her problem with using lightning was that she could only use it once. So if she has learned how to make it more efficient somehow, she might be able to use it more than once. For Ruius, who had a massive reserve of mana, this was no advantage. Let's get into it anyway. Shut up, Andrew. Like I said, I haven't read any of this, so... But for most magicians, it was a useful, if unflashy technique. The trade-off was the increase in difficulty of mana manipulation, but Roxy had done enough practice that she carried it off effortlessly. Cool. Lightning! In the same instant that her staff came sweeping down, there was a flash of electricity. The fat bolt of lightning streaked down from the pitch-black sky, causing a small explosion where it struck. A moment later, the distinctive roar of thunder shook the party, and all the nobles froze at a sudden boom. There was a moment of silence, along with many puzzled expressions. Then people began to babble excitedly, and soon one sound drowned out the rest. Applause. And that was sadly the day that Tommy, the lumberjack, had died in the forest. That was a bleak ending there, but geez. Interesting chapter. It's a really weird end to a chapter and a volume. It's just randomly this guy dies being a lumberjack, gets struck by lightning by Roxy. Yeah, that's it for A Journey of Two Lifetimes. I'm just joking. Bravo! Ruius' eyes had gone spiral shape, and he was clapping. Platio followed suit, applauding as he began to sing Roxy's praises. What an extraordinary display of magic. One could tell you shortened the incantation, but the impossibly perfect control with which you manipulated the mana was more impressive skill. I wish every magician would follow your example. The nobles might not have quite understood what had just happened, but they knew who Platio was. This was the chancellor of the Austria Institute of Magic, not to mention one of the kingdom's few magicians. For him to be full of praise, some of them thought it must have been something pretty amazing, and they started clapping too. This inspired others to join. Geez, Roxy's like literally taking over the freaking party. They're all here for like James and the castle, and it just turns into a magic show. Austrian nobles were acutely sensitive to the atmosphere around them. It was better to clap now, even if you didn't know why. Somebody just died. The lumberjack died. Somebody really hated the lumberjack, starts clapping, and everybody's like, we're clapping? We're clapping. Dead lumberjack? Sorry, I can't get over my lumberjack joke. Even if you didn't know why, rather than risk being seen as harboring ill will by not clapping at all. Not knowing this, Roxy accepted the thunderous applause with an air of self-consciousness. At the same time, though, she drew herself up a little, and there was a look of pride on her face. Roxy poof. Anyways, that's more or less the idea. I am awestruck. Master Rudius was so lavish in his praise that it began sounding slightly over the top. I doubted the reality would live up to what he said, but you went far above and beyond anything I imagined. Of course she did. I could never do justice in words. In the first place, she doesn't just have wonderful powers, she's also a wonderful person, and Rhea started off a loud rant, but Roxy deliberately ignored him. And she's like, I want my cake! Can I have the cake yet? It was the best course of action when he started acting strangely. How in heaven's name did you get to this level? With proper practice, anyone could do what I did. Well, that might be going a bit too far, but I've always tried to improve myself, and this is the result. I see. I shall teach that to my students. I'm honored. Oh, but do make sure to praise them. Things that might seem trivial to you and me could be a sign of steady improvement to a student. As Roxy said this, a hint of yearning came to her eyes. She was probably remembering the student she had once lost. Yes, I was immediately thinking Pax. Rudius, who knew that story, was for once quiet and on his best behavior. That was the severity of the wound that incident had left on Roxy's heart. Platio, noticing all this, gave a gentle nod. I shall bear that in the front of my mind. Aww. The one she didn't praise all the time, Pax. Dirtbag assaulting Pax. I ain't gonna cry over him. I'm still not gonna cry over him. It's his own damn fault. Again, it doesn't change what she sees it as. Selfie watching Edis and Roxy's conversation from Ariel's side. For all that she had drilled into them, she hadn't needed the bother. For the likes of Austrian nobles were no match for either of them. She thought that perhaps the idea of celebration of Fatoa's recovery had put her a little too on edge. You're in good spirits, Selfie, Ariel said, smiling at her. You can tell? Yes. Has something good happened? Well, today is a celebration of Fatoa recovery, and so, while it might not be how it is, I really felt that little by little, I'm giving my home back. That alone would have been enough to make me happy, but me, Rudy, Edis, Roxy, have lived here before, but we're not the same as we were back then. I was thinking about how much we've surely all grown in the meantime. Until we're able to return, I don't know. It just made me happy. This brought back to Ariel a memory of Selfie, just after the destruction of Fatoa, when she had been so frail and seemed perpetually terrified. She'd come into the palace of Asra, and by living as Fitz, she had, little by little, grown stronger. Perhaps that meant that when she was living Fatoa, back before they had met, Selfie had been even weaker and more fragile, and she doubted Selfie was the only one. Rudius was different. As for Roxy and Edis, seeing those differences had made Selfie happy. What sort of child were you back in Buena? Well, my hair was green. Like Siege, your son? Something she did not want to tell Ariel. She finally telling Ariel? I mean, technically, if she knows about Siege, she might as well. The only reason that she was afraid of telling her is because she didn't want to see her differently. That was really the only thing. I mean, it's not like something that she always has to keep a secret. I mean, at this point, it was just like, yeah, I guess I could tell her now. It doesn't matter anymore. Like Sieg, your son? Yes, I could never tell you because I thought you would despise me. Yep. True. Back then, just a sight of green hair would have probably sent me screaming in terror. Sophie chuckled. It's a good thing I kept my mouth shut then. The two of them laughed. After a moment, she added, I'm really glad we came. Yeah, it was technically something she was thinking they didn't really have to do. The party to celebrate the recovery of Fatoa was, to majority of the nobles, an event of no great importance. They got to see Timmy die in the forest. Roxy showing off. Even those who had worked on the recovery, and for those who had once lived in Fatoa, could have done without it. But people need moments to reflect on their lives. They need a chance to look at where they come from, in order to know where they are now. This party, Selfie thought as she gazed out at the familiar faces she could see amongst the partygoers, had been such an opportunity for her. Later, it was discovered that Roxy's spell had started a fire that consumed the whole forest. And killed Timmy, the lumberjack. Not only that, but the story picked up embellishments until rumors were flying that Rudius, angry at being laughed at by his wife, had destroyed it. Why? The Grey Rat family laughed themselves silly when they heard this, but that's a story for another time. And that is a journey of 2 lifetimes. We've made it through this thicky thick boy that's not actually that thick because most of it's just timelines and manga. That's still a thick boy. That's still like, shoot, that's almost twice as big as a standard volume, and it's taller print, so I would assume this probably has a lot more lines. But again, there was like a lot of short, really quick stories that really have much to really kind of dive into. And that really gets into my, shoot, I didn't even think about tier lists in this thing beforehand. I mean, I jabbed about a little bit at the very beginning, but first of all, yes, really cute little ending chapter. I think, again, this technically it is a exclusive chapter that I'm guessing Refugien wrote just for this particular volume. Everything else is just compilations of a lot of short stories that were sporadically thrown around. But this last chapter was definitely, this was a story meaty moment. This is to literally show where things are going. It's really cool because it's, again, something similar to my issues that I had with the final volume. It's literally like more of a completion story segment that should have been in that volume. Like, this would have been perfect in volume 25. This encompasses everybody. It brings most all the important figures, besides lacking Orsted, all the important figures and characters are brought back to the home. It's a full circle. Here's them back at home in Fatoa, where it all began, and seeing how everybody's changed. Edis has changed. She acknowledges Alphonse and says something very thoughtful about her family. Roxy's over here. She's improved her spells so much, and she's respected by so many people in spellcasting. Rudius is geeking out over all of his family members. Selfie is getting emotional over how everything has changed over time, and even reveals to Ariel something that she was afraid to tell Ariel a long time ago. It's a cool, like, circle of all the stories. But yes, I like seeing Roxy nuked something. But anyways, again, that's a tale of 2 lifetimes. I did it. I said it. I've been trying so hard to say a tale of 2 lifetimes. A journey of 2 lifetimes. Where would I put this in the tier list? The problem with this volume is there's a lot of really fun stories in here that, again, I love. I love these little side stories that give so much to the characters. It is definitely not a volume if you're looking for, like, again, like I said earlier, juicy, meaty, like, reveals. There's no reveals in here. These are just literally throwaways, short stories that just give personality to characters, which, again, is something that I think has been sorely lacking in, like, what, post volume 22, did I say before, of the mainline series. Does this not have a chapter breakdown? This doesn't have a chapter breakdown. My PDF has a chapter breakdown. This doesn't. Let me recall my chapter breakdown. What were the best chapters? I need to recall the best chapters in this whole thing. Light mode. Light mode. Let's see. What were the good ones? Sylphie's father's chapter was pretty solid. Roxy training the soldiers was okay. Norn and Rajard kind of cementing that whole thing was interesting. The Gospel of Roxy was a lot of fun. A couple of good moments with Elise, to be honest. I had some fun with some Elise moments for sure. Compliments to the Genius Maid. I think that was the biggest gut punch. Nanahoshi's apology was really, really good. I really enjoyed that one. I mean, I would probably say like 1 out of every like 4 is some really good chapter. And the rest is just kind of fluff. The rest is just like, again, very character improvement fluff. Just to breathe a little bit of life in the characters. I'm going to go with C. Because while there's a few really, really good ones, like Nanahoshi's chapter, Norn's chapter, the Aisha chapter, oh my gosh, the Aisha chapter is so freaking good. Besides having, like, again, like 1 in every 4 of them had like a gut punch moment, some really good moments. The rest of them are just kind of... They went out and ate a cup of tea. Norn's chapter is a good example. Not the Norn with Rajard. That one's a good one. The Norn made one. That one's a good example where it feels like it builds into something and it just kind of stops. They're very short. They're very little short stories that just really have no, like... It just feels like they're a punchline. It feels like every chapter's a punchline. And I think that kind of bogged it down a lot. So I'm like in that C- area for it. I think its biggest problem is that they're such short stories by design that they don't really have much time to really kind of build into something. And they're so sporadically kind of spread throughout, different volumes of different manga and whatnot that they're kind of all over the place. But anyways, they're good in the end though. I enjoyed it. I think for a lot of those chapters that really gut punched me, it was definitely a worthwhile read. And we'll see why it was so important to read this before redundancy as we get into redundancy next week. I know some people have been excited to jump into redundancy, and I'm excited to jump into it as well. So we'll go into redundancy 1, 2. We'll see if 3's out by then. We'll do 3, and then we'll go off to ODT. Like we have ODT after that. I don't know anymore. Somebody will tell me. Somebody will tell me in the chat. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, fun little Mushoku Monday. Some good stories in here. But yeah, greatly appreciate you guys' support, all your kind words, all those that hit the like button. All those that hit the like button are the bestest friends ever. You're not in the bestest friend club unless you hit the like button. But I greatly appreciate you guys' kind words, your support, all that stuff. It means a great, great deal to me. But yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate it. Supports channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. Here, what's a demon child doing in a place like this? Roxy, reeling a little at these unexpected questions, looked up to see a nervous-looking man with pronounced cheekbones. Why is it suddenly a female, and now it's a male? Is it multiple people? Oh my god, I am so angry right now. If you're gonna make me read all that again. Oh, Roxy said that. Damn it, I hate that they can't at least gender this stuff. They don't even gender the people. There's no clue if it's a male, female, is it somebody we know? Is it a demon? Is it a voice in her head? Ugh, I hate this stuff. Formatting of these light novels sometimes is so stupid. I have to reread all this because it wouldn't specify anything about who's talking. It literally just a quote. I don't even know if it's Roxy talking. I literally don't even know if it's Roxy talking at the time. You know it based on if she does reply.